Welcome back to The Port, lads and ladies, and here I'm going to give you a guide on some of the weapons and equipment available to naval vessels in War Thunder and how to find the information on them, and also we're going to talk about crew skills. So let's actually start off with crew skills, as that is the simpler subject. So we'll go to the Cowl, DD-547, our Fletcher class destroyer, and look at this crew. You can see it's a much higher level than my other crews here. And we'll start right off with the ship commander. He is not the most essential crew to have trained up, and we'll talk about that in a moment. First off, you have leadership. It's the same as it is for other leadership crew skills. It increases the performance of basically everyone by a small amount. You can see the top is 5%. Crew interchangeability. What does that mean? That is the amount of crew you're able to lose before your ship is disabled. So you don't have to knock out all of a ship's crew in order to disable it, just a certain amount that is determined by factors like crew interchangeability. So this is essentially the vitality of your vessel, the hit points, if you will. Radio communication. You can see what that does. Observers. These are fairly important. This determines when a target shows up on your screen. So, air targets detection distance. This can be quite helpful. They'll tell you when an aircraft is in your area, and you can see it's quite far out. So you don't need to focus on searching for aircraft. You have plenty of other things to worry about. Whether it's important to level this up, well, I like to keep it nice and high. But it's not the most important skill. Surface targets detection. This is a... this skill should speak for itself. It's like the air one, only it's for enemy vessels, ships, and smaller craft. And also, smaller craft are more difficult to detect, so keep that in mind. Excuse me. And then enemy torpedo detection distance. This is a rather important skill to have trained, and it's also important to sort of presume or play the game in your head on predicting where torpedoes are likely to be, because as you see, with a total of 0.45 kilometers detection range, that's getting dangerously close before I have a chance to maneuver. And also, you can spot bubbles in the water manually without relying on this skill, so keep that in mind. Engine room. Ship control, so this is how quickly it responds to your inputs. And fire prevention. That is, well, it speaks for itself. The better your fire prevention, the less of a chance you have of catching on fire. Gunners. These are important. So you have main caliber reload speed. I'd say this is probably the most essential skill to have, especially in a destroyer, followed closely by auxiliary caliber reload speed. This is your secondary guns. That would be the 40mm Bofors on the Cowl. AA reload speed. This one I find less important. These are generally your smallest caliber weapons, and they don't always need to be reloading all the time. Main caliber reload speed, as I said, one of the most important skills to train. AAA gunner accuracy. I don't have mine set particularly high because I actually use the main guns and the auxiliaries for anti-aircrafting. The AA gunners can just spray as much as they want. They don't deal the most damage to planes anyway. As you see here, AUX gunner accuracy, that would be again the 40mm Bofors. We have that maxed out. And then distance fuse set accuracy. Interesting that they don't have a main gun accuracy stat, as you'll generally be controlling that But it makes me wonder if there's no way to increase the accuracy of your main guns when they're being controlled by the AI, as is the default whenever you switch to a different gun set to control, i.e. when I pressed Shift S to control my secondaries, or Shift A if I ever wanted to waste my time by controlling the AA guns. Alrighty, next up, damage control. This is all going to be an increase to your survivability. We have unwatering time. That's an interesting term. This is how fast you pump out the water if you're sinking. Fire extinguishing, that speaks for itself. Breach repair, this is repairing holes in the hull. You see what I did there? So this is how fast you whip out the duct tape. And survive leadership, this is another vitality skill. So basically, if your cabin gets taken out and your command gets damaged, it's like a critical hit to your crew. It takes out more crew, and you also get a penalty to all of your skills. This makes that affect you a little bit less the higher you rank it. So I've ranked it up pretty high, just in case the bridge crew gets taken out. Logistical Services is the same as it is for other vehicle types in the game. You have repair speed, and then you need to increase the repair rank if you're going to repair over time in the hangar without spending the repair cost. I ranked this up just because it's not all that expensive, and I wanted those levels. And I'll probably never use it because I have auto repair turned on. And then qualification is the same as it is for other vehicles. You can see we're waiting to get a little bit more RP before we go for the Golden Eagle upgrade, although I enjoy the cowl enough that I've really been considering dropping those eagles to raise my skills up by 2 ranks for everyone. So pretty simple. Just to wrap up crew skills really fast, the most important one is your gunners categories, especially the main and auxiliary guns, accuracy and reload speed. Reload speed's the most important, and then accuracy is helpful, although Gaijin's been playing with the accuracy of the auto gunners, and for the most part, your AI gunners are not going to help you out in anything other than firing proximity fuse high explosive rounds at enemy aircraft, as I've talked about in other videos. And then your other skills basically line out to being an increase to your survivability, decreasing the amount of time it takes to deal with things like flooding, holes in the hull, and fires, and then how quickly you can spot enemies. Okay, now let's take a look at the Elco PT and talk about armaments and how to find the information on them. Now, what we're used to doing in ground vehicles and aircraft is going into modifications and then looking at things like ammo belts and weapons from there. But there is another way. So here's where you can find info on your torpedoes and all of these things. You can see that we have 21-inch wet heating Mark 8 torpedo times 4 with a maximum speed of 31 miles per hour and a travel distance of close enough to 11.5 kilometers. Effectively, longer range than you'll ever have to worry about in War Thunder. Generally, extreme range on these maps is 8 or 9 kilometers. So, that tells me that these torpedoes don't move really fast, but they can travel a very long distance. So these would be good for launching in a sort of fire and forget manner to close off an enemy shipping lane. Good to know. We have our different types of ammunition that we can read about here. Generally, armor piercing is more effective than high explosive at this point in the game. What's another way of learning about your equipment? You can go into X-ray and look specifically at the torpedo. As you see, It tells us all the stats on the torpedoes specifically. The depth stroke is how deep the torpedo runs. So it runs 1 meter, roughly 3 feet, under the surface of the water. That means that shallow draft vessels may pass directly over this without setting it off. Let's look at our turrets. So we have some double 50s here. Double 50 cals with 1,000 ammunition. And you can see it can turn horizontally 180 degrees and vertically depress 7 degrees or up 60 degrees. So these are decent anti-air guns. No more needs to be explained about that. You can hit just about anything, as you don't need to depress all that much before you're hitting the surface of the water. And there are no subsurface targets at this time in the game, excluding naval mines, which will be coming shortly, and apparently those are things you can shoot at. So we'll learn more about that in the future. Let's take a look at the cowl to see how you would spot things on something as large as a destroyer. First off, in X-ray view, you can look at your turrets, you can look at the gun within that turret, and again you can see what kind of guidance you have. 15 degrees of depression is going to be more important because you're doing things like aiming over the very tall sides of your vessel. You can also check out things like your 40mm Bofors. As you see, all in all, good angles of attack and guidance, and you can just hover over any particular thing that you're interested in. Hover over the torpedo tubes, it'll tell you about those torpedoes. Notice that the travel distance for these torpedoes is 5.5 kilometers. So that is going to be a lot shorter range than the Elco PT's torpedoes. These are Mark 15 torpedoes, and you see that their stroke is at 0.5 meters, so they're 1.5 feet below the surface of the water. They're going to trigger on even more objects. Arming distance we see is 15 meters, so it travels for 15 meters before it has a chance to explode. So something's at extremely close range, i.e. Almost touching the side of your vessel, your torpedoes should be useless. And then when it comes to explosive mass, they have plenty of boom. However, there's something to notice in the modifications section of the cowl in particular, and that would be the Fletcher class in general, and that would be Torpedo Mode. You can reduce the speed of the torpedo by 10 meters per second, and what that is in miles per hour, I couldn't tell you. But it increases their range by 8.2 kilometers, which is real handy. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and that changes the nature of these torpedoes entirely. You can see our distance is now 13.7 kilometers, and speed in water is 13 miles per hour when we go to X-ray view. So when it comes to changing around your torpedoes, especially, X-ray view and the modifications menu is something you should check. And then if we look at ships like the Clemson, we don't have a torpedo mode for it. So if we look at the armament, we have a Mark 8 torpedo by 12 with a travel distance of roughly 11.5 kilometers at a speed of 31 miles per hour. So it's comparable, and again you see the depth is 1 meter. A little bit less TNT, but I'm not sure that'll make a huge difference. So that is just to look at crew skills, the ones that matter, and how to find information on your naval vessels in War Thunder. Use the X-ray view, go into modifications, and check the modifications, because sometimes there seems like torpedo mode that affect how your weapons work. Anyway, guys, there's plenty to explore and discover about naval forces in War Thunder, and I encourage you all to check it out now that naval forces are in open beta testing. I really feel that this is an exciting breath of fresh air for War Thunder, and I've personally had a blast playing this game mode. Anyway, guys, I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.